Okay, I'm putting up a few announcements. I'll be right with you guys. Figure out what would be fun to talk about today. What is important in our watch talkingness? How's that? Whoops. There's a jet going by. Guess they heard about our live stream. Hang on, I'll be right there. Just a second. Hi, Taipei. Hang on, I'm working on this. I'll get to you in a second. Okay. Whoops, wrong freaking one. Wait a minute. Edit. Now it's right. Okay. All right. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, doke. All done. Hey, Goldfinger, how you guys doing? Um, while we're waiting, here's something I would like to talk about. Um, and in a way, it even has something to do with the non-topic I put up there. One of the guys put up a picture of a Bell and Ross, one of their new watches, and uh, I said, "Well, be sure when you put up something on High Horology Lounge that you include the make, model, and the movement." And so he put the make and the model, and for movement, he put Kinesi, which is sort of interesting. And here's why. Hi, Jay Newman. Um, oh, I don't know how many are free swung. Probably most of them, but I'm not sure. Okay. So back to this is sort of what got me going about this. So anyway, so I have these things, Bell and Ross, uh, a movement by Kinesi. Now, how are those two joined together? I mean, why would that be like really interesting? Well, recently, even though it didn't happen recently, I found out that Chanel owns Bell and Ross, and they also own a hunk of Kinesi with Tudor. And so I thought, well, maybe because I've been waiting for something. Why would Chanel buy Tudor? I mean, not Tudor, but Bell and Ross. They owned a part of what 25% of FP Journe. They own a hunk of Romain Gauthier. Why in the world would they want to do that? I mean, why would they buy into Bell and Ross? And then they had a couple watches with really high horology movements for like $40,000. I figured that's not going to go anywhere. So I was waiting for something to happen, and I guess that was it. So but the moral to this story, if there's a moral or the sort of the story itself, is that if you know about those things, fun to you can make all of these connections and understand why they're doing what they're doing. End of story. I know that may not be very interesting. Hey, Hamilton Juan, how you doing? Goldfinger, just missed my flight to NYC, having leaving later. Can't wait to see you once again. Yeah. Hey, listen. Yeah. This is what we're thinking of doing for those of you who are going to the Watch Time show in New York Friday night. We were going to meet up in the mezzanine like we did last year. Last year it happened by accident. This year we thought we'd do it on purpose, but do it at 6:30. Last year when we went in, we got there about right after it opened around 5:30 and headed for the bar. But I thought, well, this next year I'm gonna, for the first hour at least, I want to see how much I can about the all of the new stuff with watches and things, and I thought it'd be sort of fun. Oh my goodness, Miami and Brisbane. Oh, great. Hey, Finnegan, how you doing? Now, let me see. It's probably really early in the morning or late at night there. I've got to be one or the other. You poor guys was have on the other side of the world. Miami. So Hamilton won. Poor Florida is just getting blown around like mad. I used to go fishing off of Cedar Key years ago when I worked at the on the faculty at the University of Florida, and my boss was an avid fisherman, and so he'd always say, "Hey, let's go fishing." So we'd go out to Cedar Key and go out from there. My God, there were just 2 hurricanes in a row hit Cedar Key, and going to blow the poor place off the map. And they seem to be getting worse and worse and worse. So hang in there. I don't know if you guys were affected very much down in Miami, but man, I tell you, even Gainesville, where the university is, got really wet. Okay, enough of that. Hey, Radman, how you doing? Went to W&W Watches and Wonders in Miami. How was it? Oh, it's 1 a.m. down under. Okay. I've got my little, let me see if I can. 1 a.m. That's not so late. You Aussies are up late anyway. I mean, there's more Fosters, right? Let's take a look. I've got a clock here, and it has all of the different times. Melbourne. Brisbane. Okay. I have it set at Perth and Melbourne, but I don't have Brisbane. So Brisbane must be between the two. Glad you could make it. Hello, Monsieur de Chanel. How you doing? I'm well. I'm very well. Everyone says, hope you're well. I hope you're all well, too. The Connecticut right now, there's twice a year when Connecticut has wonderful weather. One's the fall, and plus we get all these colors, and the other's the spring. In between, it's sort of like hot here is. We get uncomfortable if it's over 70. So but hot in the winter. I mean, hot in the summer and cold in the winter. But we haven't had this last few winters. We haven't had that much snow, and that people say, well, there's no global warming. Well, there's an upside to it. I might add, at least in the wintertime. Oh man. Yeah. Oh, you okay. You guys only exported. All right. I don't know if the U.S. about the only beer that anyone coming from outside the country ever seemed to be interested in is Coors because it was pasteurized or something or wasn't pasteurized, and so they only could get it while they couldn't export it because it would go bad or something. So, but otherwise, I don't know. To me, the answer is whatever on tap. Okay, what about watches? What would be an important watch thing that we have got to finish out? Other people talk about watches, but this group is super bright. And so I expect some super bright things coming out of everybody. What is new and interesting going on with watches right now? Anybody got anything that they'd like to bring forth to this August group? What would be a fun thing to talk about? I met Tim Masso and held a $230,000 Roger Dubuis. Whoa. Okay. I I am in need of a Roger Dubuis. I'm also in need of the money to buy one, so they're both sort of on hold right now. How's Tim doing? I would love to see Tim take a look at a watch and say, "This is a piece of junk." you know, he's so nice about them all. This watch is terrible. I don't know why anybody would buy it. I don't know why we're selling it on 1916 or whatever the name of that is. And then go into that wonderful detail that he has. So, of course, he's not. That's another story. Okay. Have you ever seen the leaked Patek Cubitus? It's getting ripped to shreds online, but quite like it. To me, Patek Philippe left. They're gone after 2009. They started stuffing their watches with silicon. I just totally lost interest. Anything after 2009, and then they put on that silly PP. Uh, it's sort of like the seal of good housekeeping. And so I'm going to get an Invictus and then make up an Invictus seal of approval. This is, I don't know. I have this love-hate thing with Patek Philippe. I really do. They have such beautiful watches and great workmanship, and then they put in, sort of like having a 1940 movie that you really like, and everyone's using cell phones. They just don't belong there. Okay. So Cubitus, I'll have to. Well, Patek Philippe doesn't go to watch time shows. They haven't, in fact, for years now. Patek Philippe has really not been entering into the Grand Prix, and I think it has to do with a lot of people. I mean, the Geneva seal, they lost their Geneva seal because they put in silicon. When I'm going to go to the Grand Prix awards ceremony in November, and one of the things they have in Geneva is the Patek Philippe Museum. I think that would be a fun thing to see. See what go. I don't know. I don't want to give the curator a hard time. Okay, what else is going on? What watches? I'm trying to think of some watches I've seen. What happens? Bell and Ross. Let me sort of return to that for a second. Bell and Ross has. I've always liked Bell and Ross, not because of its horology, but rather because they had their watches look like from the instrument panel of an airplane. In fact, I've got a picture of my instrument panel when I used to fly. It's in the garage. I got this great big picture of it. My partner, who was he and I used to fly together. We owned the airplane together, and so he had these great big posters made, and we had them framed. So we got these giant posters of a an instrument panel that we used to have. My God, that was from the '80s, and now it's very different than they have now. It's from the late '80s and early '90s when we had our Cessna 177B. Okay, so anyway, going back to them now. So Bell and Ross has moved from using Solitas and ETAs to now they're using basically a Tudor from the 5600 family. Does that change the status of Bell and Ross from sort of standard horology to strong horology? What do you guys think? Oh, thanks, Nikon. The thing about Tim, I've always said this about Tim Masso. I don't watch him very much because he could talk me into anything. After listening to him describe a watch, I want to buy it no matter what it is. He is so good at it. I keep telling people, I think they had to raise that guy's pay. He's worth a fortune. I agree. I haven't had a chance to run into him. I run into him. There was a few years ago when a bunch of us got together, and I got my mitts on a Lang. Anyway, I got this. What was the first name? Not Floyd Lang. Rolf Lang. I had a Rolf Lang watch I got, and so there. What had happened? I had visited Rolf in Dresden, Germany, and so he was having trouble selling his watches. And I said, "Well, nobody knows about it." I said, Why don't we do this? Lend me one of your watches, and I'll pass it around to 12 guys, and we'll keep it for 12 months. And each one of them, we'll do it all over the U.S., and each one of them is going to talk about it on social media. And so we did that. And it worked, and we didn't break the watch. In fact, we ended up with a baker's dozen. We ended up doing 13. So they finally got back to me after going all over the U.S. And Rolf, I got a note from Rolf. He said somebody wants to buy that watch. He said, send it back. So I sent him back his watch, and they sold it, which I thought was sort of interesting. And it's a kind of promotion that, one of the things about the internet is its access, and you can have all kinds of things out there. And all we did, we just wore it and showed everybody and told them about it. And that was sort of fun thing to do. Okay. Yeah, he is. Back in a better movement is always great, but I think you really need an in-house movement to compete with the best. Bell and Ross are nice watches, so I don't. I used to think that too, but I'm not as sure anymore, and I'll tell you why. Um, some of the best watchmakers, like Agenor, like Bashir, like what's the name of it? Chronode. All three of those are made by top watchmakers. And I know that Chopek had used some Chronode movements. And, a lot of these bigger watch companies are now partnering with key watchmakers, like all of the Messina, um, H. Moser bought a stake in Agenor. Let's see. There are things like that that are going on, and so I would rather have a watch by a top watchmaker, by a top movement maker, and a good watch. This is one of the things that um, Chanel did. Chanel's got these incredible cases, and some of these luxury companies have cases that are just spectacular. Okay, and maybe they don't have the best movements, but when they team up one of these cases and dials and hands and everything with these top movement makers, you really get something. I know Chanel started its own watchmaking machinery, and they started it with Romain Gauthier as sort of the guy helping their own guys. And so now they have this high horology watchmaking. I think it's in La Chaux de Fonds. And I would rather have them with one that Romain Gauthier made. They own part of Romain Gauthier. And so I don't have a problem with a company with somebody else's movement in it. I got my Chaumet Dandy. It's got an ETA in it. It's good ETA. I mean, at least it seems a thing. It works wonderfully well. But on top of that, they have an Agenor module with two Agenais gears, two big ones in there. And it's an amazing watch. But one of the more amazing things about it that I sort of learned this way is that the cases are so good. I also have a Fabergé with a Frederic Piguet movement. I mean, a bunch of guys from Fabergé said, let's make our own movement. I don't think that would improve the watch that I got. Same thing with a Fabergé. They have a dual time watch with an Agenor movement, and then they have one with an Agengraph chronometer. So it's the kind of thing, a good movement is a good movement no matter who makes it. A crummy one is a crummy one no matter who makes it. I mean, somebody could cobble together. I've seen, some of them were like barely recognizable, somebody else's design or an old A shield that they bring back again. So, it depends on, there's in-house and there's in-house. The one thing that in-house that I do think that's important is that it shows the commitment for a watch company to invest in making their own movements. So it's sort of like, it's not a bad thing. It's just you can have really great watches with movements that are made by somebody else. I get to introduce my friends to horology every time they ask about my Hamiltons, Steinhardts, and one Omega that they're asking good questions about. One of the things about that Omega, you always have that George Daniels escapement in it. So I think that there are things like that. That's another example. That's not in-house in terms of development or invention, but it doesn't mean it's not a great thing to have in a watch. Hello, Caesar. How are you? I should be laughing at Caesar. It's such a delight. Glad you could make it. Okay, so come on, you guys. What else is going on? This is something I've come up with all the topics so far, and I'm just here as sort of a to listen to you guys. So what do you got? Something, anybody? What is important to you right now? Here we go. I like the way Rolex went about becoming in-house. Nobody ever noticed it. That was so some people think they were always in-house. You're right. Do you think Omega has better virology? You mean horology than Rolex? I don't think so. See, one of the problems that Omega have isn't Omega, it's Swatch. Swatch goes and puts I don't know, by making all of their minions to have silicon, I think it sort of lessened them. I really do. So that's my thoughts on it. So as a result, I'd probably take a Rolex, a Rolex with a what is it, pano, whatever they call their spring and gear train. Hey, Truman, did you see the Moser retrograde seconds? How much energy does that use? Oh man, that's a great question, Forbin. Not only did I see it, I don't think it uses too much, and here's why. Look at how they did it. They did it with a double hairspring. Not a double hairspring, but with a double snail cam. Let me see if I can. Nah, I did it wrong. Hang on. I can't draw one very well. Let me try it one more time. I got all this wonderful paper around here. Okay. Yeah. It looks something like this without this line here. Rats. That doesn't look like that. Okay, the way a snail cam works is that you got this snail cam and then you have a cut. It looks like a snail shell that they go and then they go around like that. Well, this one has a double one, and so you have the snail cam moving around in a circle with the arm coming down on to jerk it back into to where it belongs. And so really all you're doing is you're using the same kind of energy that you'd use as a second hand, as far as I can see. Truman, what do you think? Parachrome. Thanks, Truman. Yeah, so I think the way that Moser did it is fantastic because you can see that little double snail cam. They opened it up, and there's sort of like a little amphitheater at the bottom. And so here you got the snail cam up here, and then you got your um then your second hand down here going back and forth like that. Why do you think H. Moser is launching with Messina? I think I think what you can do with companies like that, with companies like Messina, is sort of like without using a lot of your resources, you're keeping most of your resources for your line that you have. And Messina is more of a design lab, if I understand it correctly. More, they do more design. And so essentially, without using your own resources, you can come out with some interesting stuff. Now, one of the most interesting things that they've done was that they came out with Underdog with that passion fruit, that double passion fruit. But what they did then, $60,000 for both of them, and you can't buy them separately. Now, the perpetual calendar that Moser makes, in my opinion, is one of the best. Okay, if not the best perpetual calendar around. And so, but they're fairly expensive. And so you pair this inexpensive Underdog with wonderfully fun watch. I forgot what kind of movements that they use, but their design and creativity, I think that's what they did it for. But then what they could have done was that, like, if you sold an Underdog for double what they normally sell for, you're still getting a pretty good deal. So that I think is so. I think they're what they're able to do with companies like Underdog and like Messina Labs is to have a little fun without adding a lot to their resources. The same thing is true with their stake that they own in Agenor. Here you have there's all kinds of things, and in fact, that I can tell you right now who did the that second hand on with a retrograde second hand with the double snail cam is Agenor. The reason I know it was that years ago, Jean-Marc Viderec had that used a double snail cam on a retrograde second hand that's on the Harry Winston Premier by retrograde, and that was his thing. So it's sort of like Agenor is sort of known for its retrograde stuff or work that they do. So there you have it, and then you don't have to go out and get a whole new sort of segment that works with precision engineering. You can have some guys that are already in place and have as many as you want without committing the whole bunch. So that's my take on it. Whether I'm right or not, I have no idea. Okay, let's see what's going on. Talk about Seikos. I don't know what to talk about. Seikos above the clouds. What do you want to talk about? You tell us about something about Seikos that's interesting. One thing I did hear about Seikos is that the spring drive has been giving them some problems down the line, and it was something that I found wonderfully excellent technology, but it's a quartz watch. It turns out, no wonder it's accurate. Andy Mangold, how are you? Oh, good. I'm glad you made it. Andy, you got anything you want to talk about? You let us know. We'll talk about anything. Finnegan and Ninja, what do you think of the Orny watches Christian Vanderklaar? It's a pretty amazing complication. Christian Vanderklaar, I saw the one, I'm not sure which one you mean. He has a lot of Christian Vanderklaar watches of a certain rank, we'll say, have Salida and ETA movements in them. They're not Christian Vanderklaar movements. What you get often is a Christian Vanderklaar module that's put on top of an ETA. It's exactly what my Chaumet is. It's a Agenay's gearing on top of an ETA. So, I, it makes sense. I think, I don't know. The what is that complete moon, that 3D moon that Van Cleef and Arpels have out. That's really something. But some of these other ones, I'm not too sure about, to tell you the truth. What do you think about them? Parachrome. Yeah, that was one I was trying to remember. Nikon FM. My Rolex Hulk is a 42 millimeter Steinhardt with see-through case back. Okay. CZ again. I think double snail cam from Agenor is the best. Yeah, only the very top watches have it. As far as I know, that's right. Andre, how you doing? Well, Tim Ross mostly talked about watches that are out of my price range. No. I've seen he talks about a lot of them on the stuff that he's selling for. They keep changing their name, but I guess it's called the 1916 Company now. Yeah, no, I've heard him. He does make them sound really good, and you're right. He does talk a lot about expensive ones. Maybe they figure, well, his time's not worth talking about a really inexpensive one. I don't know. I'll talk about any ones. I like them all. The vertical jerk must cost some energy. Some. Here's what you've got. Doggone it. I wish I could draw better. Here's what you've got. Well, imagine here. Here's your snail cam, and then you got a cut in it. There it is. And so you got it going around. You have a little thing going around here, and then it pops down here, and that's a little arm that moves it. Where's the energy? The rest of it is when it goes along the hairspring. It simply it's very slowly takes it up, but the jump isn't pushing it up. It's dropping down. Not even, so I don't see how it would take up a lot more energy. It could in ways I don't understand, but I don't see it right now. It's not a vertical jerk. It's sort of a downward jump on it. It might, yeah, to move it though. See, I'm trying to think what it's moving. Yeah, you just. What are they going to do with Messina Lab? I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. What they did with Underdog, I think it's fantastic, but I wish they had separated them and let them, I say, okay, here you can buy this $50,000 perpetual calendar, or you can buy a, $2,000 Underdog or $3,000, something like that, where would be an Underdog's normal price range. And it looks like, I wonder if Precision Engineering did any kind of tweaking with the Underdog movement, which would be very cool. Or even they say, wow, we got an extra H. Moser, we'll put it in your Underdog. Is the objection to silicone hairsprings thought out throughout the collector community? Yeah, Finnegan's, it's like it depends. Some do, some don't. The Geneva seal kicked them out. I said, we're not going to give a Geneva seal to somebody who's stuffing silicone hairsprings in. That's just sort of not what we were. That's not the kind of thing we were started for. My objection, and it's just a hairsprings, not other, I got no problem with a silicon escapement or a silicon. There's one with a silicon pellet fork. because they function the same way as using materials from transitional metals. However, with the silicon hairspring, not only, and the stuff about it's a lot cheaper to produce them. They come out on these wafers on this big sheets like silicon I used to deal with on a daily basis in computers. But I think what happens, you first of all, you take away any kind of your regulator. You take away it. There's no function for a regulator. For example, the swan neck regulator, they can't regulate it. The thing that Omega did, Omega had something with a blade or something, and everything was silicon, and then the blade was supposed to be able to adjust it through the blade. I don't know how well that worked. Haven't heard much about it, but I don't like it, but it doesn't mean I never said everybody has to do it. There's sort of two paths though. One path is sort of traditional horology, and the other path is the other stuff. Oh, I don't think so, Caesar. I really don't. I don't know. I don't know. I have no reason to believe that. Okay, Monsieur Deschanel, would you buy a Moser, the Singer reimagined, or the Ming with an Agenor movement? Sure, I would. But I'm not too interested in the Agengraph. I tell you, an overlooked that you might be able to pick up for a song on, I know I did, but the different reason is Fabergé. Fabergé has two really interesting watches with Agenor, one with the Agengraph movement, and the other one with another thing by Agenor. What are they called? One is a dual time zone, and so you right in the middle of it, you got a number, which I guess is the hour for your dual time, and the rest of it is just sort of going, the way they do things. The other is they have the chronograph with the Agenor Agenage thing. Here's why I probably wouldn't buy one. I can't afford it. Those things are around $40,000, and that's just over my and I'm not into. I am sort of not into chronographs, not because I hate chronographs or anything like that. Nothing could be further from the truth. I just don't like the idea of having something that would take up room on my watch. I can look at this watch, and at a glance, I can tell the time. Okay, I have to turn sideways because it's my 1921. But it's not that I'll tell you though, if I found a good enough deal on that dual time Fabergé, that would be tempting. Or if I found a good deal on a watch with an Agengraph in it, probably, because that's not a bad chronograph. And it's a great chronograph, but I mean, it's in terms of using up real estate on the dial, I like the way it doesn't do it or does it. Hey, Ali, how you doing? Since this is Uncensored, how can we rob a bank for watch money? God, I haven't robbed one in such a long time. I'm no help for you. I think banks changed since I used to rob them. So I have to ask one of these younger guys. What are young bank robbers? Hi, hater. How you doing? You're right. They did. Very good, hater. Could be a coincidence, but they came out to the second version. Any guess what? And a Guilloche dial. And our Guilloche dials are special. Uh, hey, Andre, I've been looking at Brigade Marine Date Big Date. Cost below 10,000 euros. Really like the dial of movement, and it's a sports watch. Yeah, see, I like Brigade too, but the brigades that I like are the ones that Daniel Roth made back in, I guess it was in the 80s, when before the Chaumet brothers went belly up, um, because they tried to corner the diamond market, lost everything. Had to give up Brigade, and I think Singapore company, the hour something or other bought it, and so Brigade today is owned by Swatch, and Swatch had to put that crap silicon hairsprings and everything. So to me, it lost its traditional edge. They have, in fact, the watch I really like the looks of is their tradition. But then they put, why have one called the tradition? They even have a router look like one that Abraham Breguet used. But then we got the silicon in here. So you can, the Marine was sort of the last. There may have been somebody in the Breguet family, the actual Breguet family, who was still around when they started making the Marine. But the Marine, I think that Breguet had something with the French military at one time or another, or the Navy, and they were making the Marines. But they were sort of the only thing they had when the Chaumet brothers bought it, and then they brought in Daniel Roth and some of these other guys that really did some amazing things. For a while, I think Michel Parmigiani also did some stuff with him. At one time, they wanted a Breguet with some special features that they weren't around anymore. And so they got Michel Parmigiani to make one for him. Oh my God, that watch is amazing that he made. And it's not part of the Parmigiani line. It just was sort of I don't know how he did it, but the thing is just amazing. See, I bought a salmon dial from Studio Underdog. Should arrive end of the month. I'd like to hear about that because I liked the guys when I first saw them. I don't know, maybe because I like watermelons. Truman, Sky Dweller is the only one which doesn't use a toothpick to adjust the date. Very clever, and I want one the next time. Moser dial and perpetual calendar are quite different, I think. They are. The guy who was the U.S. rep, or who used to be the U.S. rep for H. Moser, used to live nearby, and I'd go see him, Mike Margolis, who's now the rep for Chopek and some other ones, the U.S. rep for him. He showed me how the H. Moser, how you could set the perpetual calendar, and it was so easy. It's just amazingly easy to do. And of course, if you have a perpetual calendar, either you keep it wound 100% of the time, or you got to reset it. And so their focal point on resetting it, making resetting easy, I think, is what makes their perpetual calendar really amazing. The Ulstein one with did 7 parts or something like that, and they compared that to the Patek Philippe perpetual calendar that used 200 and something parts. Is another favorite perpetual calendar, but I'm not into perpetual calendars. I can't even keep a regular, one of the little ones that show up in the box. I can't keep the dates straight. I thought you could only buy them in pairs, so Underdog and Moser together. Yeah. No, Hader, that's what I was talking about. For the passion fruit, with those two, they should have let Underdog go on that one, but you can only get the Underdog which is probably $5,000. Those are top. That would be a top price for an underdog. And if they had sold it for that and then sold the perpetual passion fruit H. Moses separately, the underdog would be out of stock by now. It would have been out of stock a long time ago. But they didn't. And I'm not sure why they did it that way, because they're two really interesting watches. The underdog does something special too. Beside both of them, that color combination is very, very powerful stuff that they have. Silicon are great for dive sport watches. Hey, Truman, listen, they're great. Silicon, my wife has one that's full of silicon. It's called an Apple smartwatch. That thing is just fantastic watch. Keeps great time. She can talk on it like Dick Tracy. You know, that thing is amazing. But if I wanted a smartwatch, I would have started with a quartz watch, which is way more accurate, and got a quartz and went from quartz to smartwatch, and wouldn't even mess with these archaic technology that we have with our watches. Instead, we have workmanship and this type of artistry that I like anyway. But you want to you can put plastic in there too if you want. You got the salmon underdog, yeah. Yeah, the only way you can get the passion fruit one is getting it with the H. Moser. Okay, Caesar, hater, I'll go with you. Today's Swatch Breguet isn't some it's sort of I'm not okay. I got you, Truman. What do you think of IWC Da Vinci's Chrono? 2 on auction at Bezel. Looks nice and seems that movement are in-house. There's something in the past of IWC, and then at some point they just started putting ETAs in, and probably now Solitas in a lot of theirs, and they have some kind of IWC identifier. But then they do have their own in-house movement. I just don't think much of them. I love the names of their watches. A Portugueser. I don't know why that sounds like such a cool name. I wish I had a Portugueser. That just sounds cool. Andre. They first didn't have silicon. No, they didn't. Silicon. This is funny. Silicon is very practical. It really is. I have nothing against the practicality. What silicon hairsprings do is that they reduce the magnetization to almost zero. They don't have the same hairsprings made of transitional metals are much more affected by magnetization and by heat and cold. They will expand and contract so that your timing can be off. And so with silicon, I mean, sort of like a Twinkie full of preserves, they'll last forever. They can put those things in a time capsule. And they've got so many preservatives in them, but are they food? Are they something else? I don't know. It's sort of like silicon is the Twinkies of the mechanical watch world. Anyway, I don't mean to be cruel to anyone, but that's how they strike me. Finnegan the Ninja. Do you like the new Bernhardt letter 3 times? Yes, I do. God, that watch. The thing Letter, his stuff is very good. There's a great example of a real craftsman, a real watchmaker craftsman. His stuff I really like. It's just crazy expensive though. I mean, all of the independents, even the young guys coming out, the young guys who are in the AHCI are like way up here with their prices. There's a gal who is one of the candidates. Her stuff looks awfully good too. She does some good work. Um, I think I don't know how this is a hard thing about. There's a lot of criticism. They say, "Oh, these guys are charging crazy prices and things like that." There's not many ways to stay alive in the watch business. Believe me, it's tough. It really is. And if you go into it, um, I think there are a number of different ways you can do it and survive. But there are even more ways that you can go into it and be a dismal failure. So it's in you know you take a look at a guy as talented as Marco Lang. Marco Lang started Lang and Heim, and now they forced him out because he needed the money to keep going. And so all of these investors put all this money into it, and he wanted to keep the artistry, if you will, the craftsmanship in all of his watches. And it's just not a very efficient way to make watches until, unless people you got them lined up to, chip in a whole lot. So what he has done, he's sort of now started Marco Lang watches separately. If you look at Lang and Heim, they haven't come out with anything that doesn't have a movement that was either initially by Marco Lang or one that was sort of fixed up. They have the UWD 33.1. That was Marco Lang made that for them so that they'd have one they could sell to everybody. And some people got it before that they cut it off. There was this one god awful watch company in where was it? I can't think of the town where they have the beer festival. Anyway, they had this one watch company started with an L. I can't remember the name of it though, and they had the ugliest watches imaginable. They were just terrible. One model wasn't so bad, but like they were selling for around 7,000 euro. Uh, that I wish if they had made better looking watches. That's one of the few things that where they had this great movement with terrible design. So Munster, they were in Munich, Germany. I can't think of the name of the watch company though, and I think they went out of business. Thank God. They gave back. I think they may have returned all the UWD 33.1s back to Lang and Heim, but God, those were ugly watches. Oh, that's great. Yeah, see, this is the thing, Caesar. Here you got a company that can make watches and survive at that price point. And the way to survive at that price point is have very affordable movements in them. And that's what Underdog does. And apparently they have some creative and good dial makers, ideas, case makers, and so forth that they have available to them that they can do it profitably for 1,700 US dollars. That's great. I wish they had done that with the one that they came out with Moser because it does the underdog version does more than your regular underdog. But you can't. I mean, who's going to pay $60,000 for it? Now, if you want the perpetual calendar bad enough, well, then that's something. Then you get an underdog with it. So, I don't know. Okay. Um, if they get offered the FP Journe Elegante for half the retail price, would you take it? I don't know. The there was actually the quartz movement was designed by FP Journe in that particular watch, but I don't know. It's an awfully big watch. It's probably something I wouldn't go for, even though I it's fairly admirable. Truman. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. As an investment, you're right, Truman. Hi, 911 Euro. How you doing? I understand IWC's newer Portugueser movement is nearly an exact copy of the previous out of house movement. If true, it's disappointing they didn't stretch themselves to make a larger and more spec. Like I said, was, we staying in business in the watch business is very difficult. Very difficult. It's hard for just about everything. Here you have this complicated little bitty micro thing. And what could go wrong? Well, something could go wrong with a movement. Something could go wrong with a case. I mean, these things are micromillimeters, can make a difference. Something can go wrong with the covering on the dial. The hands can go goofy. God, you can get jacked up at customs if you don't use the right the right strap. Jesus, there's just more ways to get bounced around in the watch business. I think the guys in Larique have been subject to every one of them. we'll come out of this. If Nietzsche's was true, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. I'll tell you, the guys in Larique, we're going to come out with muscle men. Uh, yeah, I don't know 9/11 on that one. Hey, Idle Time, how you doing? I'm just out of running some errands here in Northeast Florida. Is Northeast Florida still there? Just checking. I hope it is. Hope you guys didn't get blown away because there's Jesus. I say you see on TV these barrier islands. Poor Florida. When I was there, it was very different. This is back in the 70s when I was at the University of Florida, and it was very different at the time. And all I remember was that it was always muggy and it rained, but that was it. I never remember. This is in Gainesville. They could have had some stuff on the coast that I wasn't aware of. But man, now we get these serious hurricanes. Insurance rates are so high, nobody can afford it. Man, hang in there, you guys. Florida will do the same thing that Larique has experienced. That'll make you tougher idle time. Believe me. Andre, I really like watches with complications. They're fascinating. What is holding back me are service costs. Is that as high as I fear? That's a good question. I think, one of the problems in service costs is you can't get some local guy can't get the parts he needs. Like Rolex, if Rolex needed a little screw, you couldn't get it without some special kind of dispensation or something. I don't know. I got complications. I don't know. I've got I guess one of my more complicated watches is my hemispheres, or my Ovale with the pantographic hands. Or my Henry double hairspring. Any one of those, I haven't sent in for any kind of work yet. Oh yeah, I did. I did send in my retrograde, my FP Journe retrograde, and it ran me about $2,000 for service, just general service. Works fine though. The thing is in primo shape. But yeah, I don't know if that was because of it, because the Chronomet Cervane was not cheap. it was like 1,500, I think. So I paid more for the more complicated one. So I guess it would be more. Yeah. Um, the thing to do if you're really worried about the expense of service, don't buy a real expensive watch if you're worried about expensive service, because they usually go together. I had a simple, beautiful Parmigiani Colpa, just day and hour, minute, second, and date. That was it. Cost me about $1,000. They did a great job. So, that was pretty expensive to begin with. What would happen if I sent in my hemispheres? I don't know. I'm afraid to. It could probably use a service too. It's a great question, though. Oh, tourbillon. Uh, I'm not the. I listen. Harboring 2 is an exception in about every way you could think of it. Okay. Um, First of all, they don't make a lot of watches. I think the thing that can get you in trouble is when you want to make a whole lot of watches with the idea if you make more watches, you'll make more money. But in order to do that, you have to build up more debt to get the parts, to hire the people, to do everything else. I think what Harboring 2 does, they keep it small. Richard Harbring designed the A11, which is like still used. And so they're paying for the same plate, the same base plate is used in all of the Harbring 2 watches. Richard and his wife Marie both work on the watches, and they hire a couple people, but they only have a few hundred of those that come out every year. There are waiting lists that go from now to the moon on a lot of their watches. So yeah, I mean, so they and they don't want to make I mean, Richard Harbring in particular, I think, is more of the artist. One of the things they met and fell in love in Dresden, and the Dresden watches are all the ones that, for German watches, have people like they identify with it. I think Richard Harbring and Stefan Kadoki, I know, are buddies, and they hang out with Marco Lang and Christian Kling. So look at the watches that come out of Dresden. And so I think that even though he's in Austria and has worked for IWC, Richard Harbring is really a Dresden kind of guy at heart. Maybe Maria is from Dresden. I don't know. Enough of this romance. Yeah, but they are an exception. Hey, Lee, how you doing? I just noticed you were talking. It's sort of like, oh, I just realized the wind's blowing outside for some reason. Oh, it's Bill talking. Idle time. I'm in Interlaken, 30 miles outside of Gainesville, and everything around here is just fine. That's good to hear, idle time. It really is. Because, man, I used to go, we used to go fishing all the time out of Cedar Key, and I don't know if Cedar Key is still there. There was one island that got blown in half. That used to be one island, and now it's two. I'm glad to hear that, idle time. More old? Geez, I don't know. I'm old enough. I'm old enough to know better. I should put it that way. I'm old enough to know better to get involved in watch collection. If it ain't broke, don't touch it. Yeah. Hi, Arturo. How you doing? Thinking about an IWC Portugueser. Okay. Yeah, it could be a way to keep the cost down. Yeah, they're not a high profit. They've got their little atelier or whatever they call it in Austrian or German, and they won 4 Grand Prix medals. I mean, that's amazing for a little company like that, especially one that's not Swiss. That's the other thing. They say, "Oh, you guys are." I really think Harbring 2 is one of the. I think for a watch collector, it's ideal. It's an ideal company. They have relatively speaking, affordable. They have a world-class watchmaker making their watches, and Richard Harbring. And Maria, I guess, probably is pretty good too. Um, they're hand wound, and just they stay. They're good watches. I don't I think it is an ideal for watch collectors, and as long as they are, I think they've got a. I don't know what other ways they could innovate. I'd like to see them put in a uh, remontoir égalité, because they have some other things they've done in some of their watches. Oh, what's that thing called? The Forta Booby that gives the really fast second hand. Forgot what I never could pronounce it. It was Ford is something or other. Engineer, and I hardly see anybody talking about it. Well, one of the reasons, Arturo, is that you first of all have to find out what is what movement they have, because they're not very forthcoming about it. They will say, "Oh, this has a X, Y, and Z movement," and then you look up X, Y, and Z that are IWC movement. It turns out, oh, well, that's really a Solita, and so you end up paying in-house prices for a Solita movement. That's why I don't like IWC or Brightly and a lot of these other ones that pull that stunt. And a lot of times they sort of rely on days gone by. And I think that Swatch is really messing things up. With Blank Pawn, what they've done, they say, well, we're only putting in, forgot what the oh, and it wasn't Blank Pawn. It was Harry Winston. They bought Harry Winston. They spent $1 billion to buy Harry Winston, which is known for its jewelry, of course. But their watches, the thing about Harry Winston watches were that they always hired these great guys. This is what your top jewelers do. Like Harry Winston, you have Hermes, well, I guess Cartier in a way, but Cartier doesn't, I don't count them. Chanel, Hermes, so you have those ones that really do that. But some of them they're like everyone else. They got some affordable ones with not expensive movements. I like what, look at Chanel did, though. They bought a hunk of a movement making in Kinesi along with Tudor. And so now they've got strong horology as opposed to, what you get with a Solita. All right. And I think the Chinese movements are improving to the point where, they're fraction of the price. But then you say, well, would you rather have that or a Solita, which costs, 4 or 5 times as much? And so I think that's something else. And I've been seeing it come in some of these watches that we've seen. They don't want to do it because they don't want to be seen as having a, quote, cheap Chinese movement. And some of them are inexpensive, but they're very good movements. There are a lot of different things to look out for. For years, I've been saying the Chinese are developing really good stuff. If you look at the independent watch group, AHCI, I think, you'll see a number of really excellent Chinese watchmakers who are coming into it. So things, so hold on to your hats, guys. And they own it too. Like somebody Angelus is owned, well, not Chinese, but Citizen. It's owned by Citizen. They own Angelus. They own Frederick Constant and Arnold and Son. Those are all owned by Citizen. So Citizen has, are their own, or they could be owned by Seiko. Some used to be owned by Seiko, I think. Not those particular ones, but other ones. They still may be. There's a great presentation by Richard and Marie Harbring at the HSNY with a breakdown of the costs compared to other brands and how they do it. Great example, Hader. Yeah, if you're not a member of the Horological Society of New York, consider it. Otherwise, go there and see if you can get go through their library of recorded presentations, and that's a great one. Oh, Caesar. I saw the presentation too. It's very informative. Yeah, they're very special. They're a great one. You're welcome, Arturo. Oh my goodness, it's later than I thought. Hey guys. Sorry for burning up so much time. I got interest. You guys have interesting stuff. Thank you very much for coming today. And everybody have a great week. If you're going to the Watch Time show in New York Friday night, we're thinking of meeting up on the mezzanine floor around 6:30. It opens at 5:30. So 6:30. So we'll spend some time with each other. And maybe this year I'll be able to get a chance to see some watches, more watches. Take care. Have a great day.